It's just after midnight. Welcome to the Graveyard Shift, a new show in which we can hold conversations out of character and discuss horror and all things relevant. Tonight we're here to talk about the NoSleep Writers Blackout. We have a few guests with us, including writers, narrators, even a couple of admins from the Creepypasta subreddit and the NoSleep Writers Blackout subreddit. First we have Slimebeast, who is actually an admin on the Creepypasta subreddit, and he's a writer himself. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
I'm looking forward to making this as weird as possible.
I'm hoping you go past that point, actually. Next, we have Kyle. He's also a writer.
Hello, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Did I catch you in the middle of a drink?
No, but what are you wearing?
Hold on, let me take off my clothes and I'll tell you.
It's Jake from State Farm.
All right, and we just heard from Raz, who prefers to be called ItSeesYou. That's his Reddit name. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We did have RonnieReads in here for a minute, but his connection apparently committed suicide, which goes right with the theme tonight. So we'll hopefully see him pop back in if his device fixes itself or comes back to life, reanimates, whatever you want to say.
We destroyed him.
All right. So what's going on here for those who are not familiar with the situation? There's been a lot of complaints among a lot of the writers on Reddit, horror writers specifically, that some of the narrators, being the people who make YouTube videos and narrate those stories, are not getting permission before doing this. Some of them, maybe they just don't know any better. Other ones, maybe they do, and they just want to monetize those videos and not have to pay anybody for it. I don't know. I can't speak to that because I don't know all of them. But what the NoSleep subreddit decided to do in protest of this, and maybe I'm speaking incorrectly already, but these guys will correct me in a minute. They decided to basically go on strike, and they called it the NoSleep Writers Blackout. I think that lasted about a week. They're back now, so they're no longer gone, but they just wanted to, I think, raise awareness of the situation. Maybe we can ask Slimebeast a little bit about that, since he admins one of those.
I mean, I don't know too much about the inner workings of NoSleep itself.
Right.
Since I am on r/creepypasta, the boomer of subreddits, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I first read about it back when it was first being discussed on the r/the Writers Blackout subreddit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I took interest because someone linked it to me. I'm sort of, I guess, relatively infamous or notorious for going after people for creators' rights violations. And yeah, somebody sent me that and I read through it and I basically just know what's been told to the public. So someone who's on the inside might know more. I don't know.
Right. Maybe Kyle might have something to say about it. Kyle's also a writer. He's in here with us today. What can you give us any better explanation than I did, Kyle?
You summed it up pretty good. Basically, it was designed to bring awareness to the issue because, as you said, a lot of times there's a case of people not understanding how copyright even works on the internet. You would be surprised at the amount of people that believe that if it's on the internet, they think it's free. And so it's for them to take and to use for whatever they want it to be used for. And that's so prevalent. And so when they took the subreddit private, it was designed really to raise awareness to users and to like narrators. So it got some good results. There was a lot of interviews. Mashable did an interview. Bloody Disgusting did an interview. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There was quite a few other ones. I think The Independent did an interview as well with the head moderator. Command 102, I think, is the username. If I got that wrong, I apologize.
Yeah, I think it's CMD 102.
They were able to do that, along with doing an interview with TJ Lee, who is the head of the Writers Blackout. He was able to do a couple of interviews as well.
Very cool. What about What about ItSeesYou? Do you have anything to say about the basic description of what's going on with that?
I think the basic description is pretty well covered. We make art, people steal it. We're unhappy with it being stolen.
Right. I forgot to ask, I think all three of you are writers. I know Ronnie, who's having trouble connecting right now. I know he's a writer and a narrator, but do any of you guys do narrations?
I do not, but since Ronnie is not on here, I did want to mention that he has been able to promote the awareness on his channel over on the Dark Somnium. He did like a 9-minute video that was designed to like help people understand about copyright and how it works.
I do narrate from time to time. I was the showrunner over the Twisted Tales podcast for about 7, 8, 9 episodes. I've narrated for a lot of people on other narration podcasts, and I used to do a lot of like old school radio type shows in my area back when I was in my first college for broadcasting.
Right. That's pretty cool. I've always been a fan of, I don't know if you're specifically talking about horror-based, like story-based radio shows, but that's actually how I discovered the whole YouTube narrator creepypasta thing. Is I used to look for old, like 1940s or 1950s radio drama horror shows on YouTube.
Yeah, we did a horror and sci-fi with the house-made sound effects. If it's raining and storming, you got your piece of sheet metal, you're shaking, and all that stuff.
Let me ask you, since you've done narrations, before we get into the writer side of it, I think we already did a little bit, but let me ask you, from the narrator side, how do you view this? How do you think other narrators view this? Do you think any of them are, maybe they just didn't know about this, or do you think they're doing it on purpose, or some of one, some of the other? What do you think?
So there's a rule when it comes to filming, pretty much any industry involving art. You do it. You don't ask permission, but you do beg forgiveness. And that's a common thread. It allows you to do a lot more to complete your vision, but it's when you finally have to beg forgiveness that you realize, the trouble you're in. The problem with begging forgiveness is what you've done, and you're only angry about it when you've been caught, which is a lot of what we're seeing, I think, right now. Because as a narrator, man, you've got to contact people. You put out calls for people. I even went so far as to get like a little contract signed from authors, to cover my ass, because that's what you need to do. And if you're not approaching the authors, if you're not, having some kind of contract, and you're just doing the, do it and beg for forgiveness act, I kind of feel like that kind of mentality has become part of the problem in this situation. When I do something like this, I make sure that I've contacted all the authors. I make sure that I've got contracts signed, whether there's money involved or not. And people they can do those things. They know intelligently that they need to do those things, but they're following that beg for forgiveness later rule, and that's what's causing all the problems, I think.
We just listened to Raz talking about the viewpoint from a narrator's point of view. As a writer, what do you think of that?
What I've seen in the past is the most common theme is when a narrator approaches you, they tell you, hey, I'd be interested in narrating your story. I'll give you credit, and I'll link it back to your subreddit or, Facebook profile, whatever it is you've got going on. I wasn't actually aware of people stealing content of mine until more recently, when it became a bigger issue, I guess, as I became more prolific. I guess the more prolific you become, the easier it is for people to steal your content because you've got more of it out there. I don't know if that's true or not. It's also like, I noticed that the popular stuff usually gets stolen a lot more. Usually, though, it seems like also another thing that I've seen is like Raz said, is they think, oh, well, I have such a small subscriber base, I won't get caught. So it's not a big deal if the writer doesn't find out about it, because maybe they think, well, I'm not monetized yet, so I don't need to worry about asking for permission because it won't make a difference. But I personally think that any creator will tell you that, we're flattered whenever people want to use our content, but we also really appreciate it whenever people will, ask permission to use it.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a musician as well, and I've definitely seen people who I had either worked with or, had seen me play that I've later seen using stuff that I had written. And the funny part about that is if they would have just said, hey, I like that, you mind if I use that? I might have just said, yeah, go ahead. But then to see them just blatantly steal it without even asking, it's a completely different feeling. Now that we've just heard from Kyle a bit from the writer's side, what does Ronnie think about the narrator side?
Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily actually a good because I know that like the way I go about my stuff is not the norm. I think Kyle will probably know a little bit about this. Like I've always offered to pay the author even when I wasn't really making anything. Like, well, not always. I'll say like once I got monetized, I started. And prior to that, I'd always asked for permission and made sure to talk to them. Like I've been working with Kyle for a while now, like years, and like I still pay him for stories that I did like a year and a half ago. As long as they're still getting views. So like my opinions on like the way narrators and writers interact is a lot different than they are. And when I started earning money, I thought that like I should give something back to the writers because without their stories, I wouldn't have anything to read and I wouldn't be making money in the first place.
Right.
And then over the last few years, the last like 2 years, I've been working more with people on NoSleep and stuff. And I get like lately, there's been the thing with people stealing work, but there's also been the thing with writers like noticing like how bigger channels with like millions of subscribers will make like thousands of dollars off their stories. And so there've been there's been a group of writers with the Blackout who have been working to try to get better compensation for writers, because if like a YouTube channel is going to read their story and get like a few $1,000s, then the writer should get compensated in some way. So personally, I feel like I don't agree with the whole just doing it and asking for permission later, because it doesn't but the reason I feel like that is because it doesn't matter if what your chances of getting caught are. It's like the right thing to do,
Right.
Like I that's just me personally. Like the only times I've ever narrated stories is when like I know it's almost impossible to contact the author because when they posted the story, they didn't post it under a name of any sort, or it's been so long that the story's been covered in a million different ways by a million different people, and the author, obviously is fine with that. Like
Right.
Ted the Caver, I did that, which is like a 20-year-old story.
Yeah.
And nobody really has a way of contacting the guy that originally posted that. And I freaking tried. I tried so hard. I even I looked up the contact information for that weird film company that did like an indie version of that story to try to contact them, but that didn't pan out. Like if the author's available, I always make sure to contact them because I don't feel like if it takes like 5 minutes to just run it by them, it's the least somebody can do. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if they're going to get caught or not, in my opinion.
I definitely see how people could be thinking that. And I agree with you on the, you should ask permission no matter what, whether you're someone who's making money off of your posts yet on YouTube, or whether you're, brand new, someone who's brand new to narration, kind of like me. I've only had a channel for a month. I actually haven't narrated anybody else's stories yet because I figured I should probably write a few and just get, examples of what I sound like up there so people can decide whether they want me to narrate their stories or not first. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't do anything without at least trying to ask first. And if, they say no, I don't do it. If they say yes, great. With a monetized channel getting, millions of views and actually making money, I think it's the same thing should apply there that applies to any art form, whether it's music or film or anything else. The writer should get a cut. Now, I don't really know what that cut should be. Maybe I don't know if they've come up with ideas themselves yet, but there definitely should be something in place contract wise that if they start making money off of it, then, X percentage should go to the writer.
Yeah, I'm one of the mods for the Writers Blackout on NoSleep. I've been working with them for a little while to kind of like come up with a good way of working that out. It's been kind of difficult lately because there's like we want to make sure that if a big channel makes lots of money off somebody's story, that that author is compensated. But at the same time, like there are smaller narrators like my girlfriend who recently started narrating, who has just a few thousand subscribers. She doesn't really make anything off her videos.
Right.
And I'm trying to make sure that there's like a difference between like charging just anybody to narrate someone's story and understanding that like only the big channels are the ones that really are going to be pulling in like drastic amounts of money off their story. So they should just be like focusing on making sure that the big channels are paying them, not necessarily the small channels. It's a bit of a confusing thing that's going on, but I'm hoping that we can like get it to a point where it's, because like I don't want like I do think the author should be compensated, but I don't want smaller narrators or people that are interested in narrating like just like turned off of the whole idea because they're like, well, if I ask permission, I'm going to have to pay them too, you know?
Right.
So we're working on that, but
yeah,
I think that'll get better as time goes on.
Yeah, personally, I think that a good route might be, and I don't know if this has been talked about already, to maybe have a single all-encompassing sort of contract, one that says maybe for channels that are, this would obviously be smaller channels, but channels that are not yet monetized, obviously, you know, there's no money coming to them, so the percentage would be 0. But once they do become monetized, and you might even put some sort of number in there, like, I don't care if this person makes less than X number of dollars a month, but once they hit a certain threshold, then, you know, maybe X percentage can be shared with the writer at that point. That's what I would think.
We are working on something like that that's based off of views, like channels that are at least a million, get at least 1 million views a month or more. Like pay this much, then 2 million views would pay this much, and 3 million views and so forth. And the reason we determine that is because anybody that makes under 1 million gets under 1 million views a month, unless it's, you know, like right at that edge where they're getting like 900,000 views a month, they're not going to be making too much. For example, my girlfriend, I'm not exactly sure how many views she gets a month. I know that like her videos have been getting a few thousand views on each one.
Right.
She makes just a few dollars. She is monetized, but she just makes a few dollars. So if she wants to try to go and ask for permission for a story, but that author wants to charge her like $10 per story, she's going to be losing, like, you know, she's going to be, you know, like losing $8 per story. And like, you know, I think that's like not very fair, because as the whole idea with paying authors came about when, you know, you started seeing how much these big channels make. And if they're making thousands of dollars off their story, then that's understandable. But if they're not making anything really off their story, I don't really think the author should be trying to make money off that person, if that makes sense, you know? It's more so just like sharing this revenue if there's a lot of it, but that's why I would think it would be better to go by a percentage rather than a set amount. Like you said, some people want $10 even if it's someone who isn't getting very many views. If they're not making any money, there's no money to spread around, so you're sending them into negative money territory. Then they're having to pay out of their own pocket from something else that had nothing to do with the video, and then that might just turn off people from like narrating at all, which I think is unfortunate, because a lot of people have fun doing it.
Absolutely. What does Slimebeast have to say about any of this? You have any other ideas you want to throw in?
Well, I want to wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think it's up to the author whether they charge or not, and if you don't want to pay them, you don't use it. You find another author, another story.
Sure.
You know, people who are making 1,000 views per video are making reasonable money. Not any big amount, but, you know, even if you're making like $30 a month, you know, that's revenue based on other people's work. If you put up 1,000 different stories and you only get 10 views per story, you know, at the end of the day, the person who's narrating is making money off of those stories collectively, and each separate story may not be earning very much, but that's the whole problem is YouTube analytics go by video.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you have a bunch of videos up, you're only going to be making a pittance per story, but you can build that into a larger monthly fee, a monthly payment. Like personally, I've had a video that hit, I think it was like 300,000 views or something like that, and I made $1,000 off that video. So Other than that, I don't have any big videos. So there's always the chance that one of your videos, can go and grow big.
Sure.
And at that point, the author would have to come back and say, you know that agreement that we had? Can I go back on that? Can I?
Right.
When I said you could do it for free. And
now, what was the
unmonetized channels for sure? Unmonetized, no big deal. But I think once you start monetizing, as I said, if an author wants to be paid for their work, even if you're going to make 10 cents off it, if you don't want to pay the author, there's tons more that are happy to just have it done for free. So.
Right. I'm sorry. How many views did you say the video got that made you $1,000?
It was like 300,000. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I was going to say I know people who say they generally make about $1 per 1,000 views. Some people make less than that, and some people, I guess it depends on what type of channel you are, what type of content you're sharing.
Right.
Some people make more than that per 1,000 views. So it's kind of hard to judge, I'd say, just by how many views they're getting. That's why I thought maybe a percentage payment would be more fair than just a straight up payment. Like, here, you have to pay me X number of dollars, even if the video, only makes $1. So that's my view on it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like if you were just a farmer and you're out in your garden and you're growing potatoes, McDonald's may want to order a big bunch of potatoes and send you a lot of money, but a small market that wants to get like 10 potatoes from you, some small amount, they can't just say to you, well, we're not going to make much money on these potatoes, so can we just not pay you for them?
Oh, right.
We're going to only make like $10.
Right.
If I can clarify something I was saying earlier, sure. I wasn't out expressing that small channels shouldn't pay at all, but when authors, for example, when authors come at somebody knowing that they're going to make $2 and they're like, all right, well, I want 10. That just seems predatory in the opposite way. Cause authors are kind of against, they're kind of uniting against people, taking advantage of their stories. But when you swing it too far in the other direction, it's like, all right, I know that you're going to make $2, but I want you to pay me more than that. It seems a little unfair, which is why revenue, a percentage, should be. If they want 50% of $2, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because then nobody's losing money.
Well, I mean, if somebody wants to hire me to write their movie, and their movie bombs and doesn't get many views and many tickets, I still want my payment for writing the screenplay full amount.
Right, but if they were making a movie, they would know how much they're going to make off it. They wouldn't be like, well, we're making a movie. We could make billions of dollars. So we'll pay you $500 million. And then they bring in $2 million. Nobody would do it that way. In the movie industry, they would pay you based on what they think they're going to earn, which I think in the narration thing, that should be similar. If they're going to make $2, if you really want to make a percentage of $2, that's fine. That's fair. Send them 50, send them $1.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about the major movie industry, where we have large production companies, they're given a set budget ahead of time. So they already have that money that they know they can pay. Whereas I think we're talking about smaller YouTube channels where they might only be making a few dollars a month or less.
Right. Well, I mean, they do have the money to pay, though, because
sure,
they have internet connection, they have a microphone, they have recording software.
Yeah,
it's not like they're
one thing that I was
they can't pay
about,
$20 or something.
Right. I don't think they shouldn't pay. I just lean more toward, on the smaller people, I lean more toward a percentage rather than just a straight out number.
one thing I was wondering about is when talking about small narrators, because I enjoy finding different styles and seeing how that they can bring their own personality to a story and stuff. What is the best way to help a narration channel to grow? Because some of them, maybe they're just doing it for fun, but I know a lot of them, they want to be able to turn it into a career. So for you, Michael, you're a new narrator. So
right.
What type of things could as a writer do to even possibly help you reach becoming a monetized channel? One of the things that Ronnie and I have had for about a year is doing the 50-50 split. And I think that's something he does with almost everybody that he works with.
Sure.
And like I've often wondered if there's a way, basically, like I know I talked to other narrators who have said that getting a story first really helps a lot, because like you hate to go and find 10 videos of the same story, you know?
Right.
Like it hurts your own views, especially
Sure.
because of like creepypasta. You know, you type that in, you'll get, you know, all these creepypasta narrations that are probably stolen because it's like audio recorded voices that sound like robots and stuff like that.
Right.
But like, I guess my question is, for the smaller narrators, would there be some kind of way to like possibly even, you know, it needs to be, in my opinion, like a way to have it where you scratch my back, I scratch yours, get smaller writers even to work with them to create stories that could build their own channels, you know, something like that, where they
Sure.
say, okay, when I become a monetized channel, I'll give you, you know, X amount for giving me all these stories and stuff, and it
Yeah.
could possibly benefit that way. I don't know. That's just an idea that could possibly work in the future.
Yeah, I definitely see things, people working together like that could definitely help. People who are not larger or monetized at the time could help out others who are also starting out. Like I immediately had probably 10 or more other small newish channels offering to collaborate and work with me immediately. And I think that helps. But of course, working with someone who's got a little more of a following obviously is going to help slightly more. But I think on any level, it helps to work together with other people, whether it be writers working with narrators or, writers even working with writers.
I have a input on that also, if I may.
Absolutely.
So, to go on, to bring up what you said a minute ago about how like it is true, getting like, like if there's a good story, you want to narrate it before other channels because that'll bring in interest. But it's not always bad to do. Like, for example, I did a story that at the time that I did it, a bunch of narrators had done it. I did mine a year ago, and at that time, I think there was already like 10 other versions on it. Mr. Creepypasta had done it. Mr. Creeps had done it. The story's called like My Dog Was Lost for 3 days and What Came Back Wasn't My Dog.
Okay.
Mr. Creepypasta did his 4 years ago, and Mr. Creeps did his, I think, a few weeks or a few months before I did mine. Mr. Creepypasta's version has 300,000 views, but mine has 400,000 views, even though like I definitely wasn't the first person to do it. In fact, I think I'm probably the most recent. And oh wait, no, there's somebody that did it 8 months ago. But like doing stories that have been done even by like Mr. Creepypasta has like I think almost 2 million subscribers. So like doing stories that have been done by other channels isn't the worst thing. I personally don't mind too much if another channel's done a story, just because one thing that I think is good to remember about like narrating is that you do it for fun. Like even me, even though it is my job, I still at the core just try to make sure I do it for fun, because you don't want it to become stress. Like you don't want to start chasing after numbers and stuff, because then it just becomes extremely stressful and not fun at all. And but that's my little input on that, is that like while it is good to get to stories first, it's not necessarily something to be avoided. I think you can still definitely grow your channel off old stories that are good. But yeah.
Well, I think maybe, just guessing, maybe part of the deal with yours getting more views than his, not even having to do with like even the quality of what either of you might have, presented it with. I think it more, some of the contributing factors could be that maybe you advertise better than he did. Maybe you put it out there more than he did. Maybe there are more people looking for creepypastas and or narrations now than there were 4 years ago, which I'm sure there are. So maybe that results in larger numbers when you make a brand new version of it. That's what I would think.
Yeah, and that does make sense too. There are definitely a lot of factors that are at play as to why. Even as simple down as something as simple as like, personally, I think my thumbnail's better than his. His was like 5 years old, so like that's just like my thumbnails, from a year ago suck ass. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear, but
Go for it.
so even something as simple as that could be, the deciding factor as to why it
Why are we
has
talking
more. But
about your thumbnails? How many thumbnails do you have?
me, well, I mean, one for every video, so like almost 700.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like real jar of thumbnails.
Oh, what? Ew, no, gross. Yeah, that's what's getting the video views. Is that I didn't mention in the video? No one's ever seen it. It's in my closet, but that's somehow affecting it.
Yeah. Yes. That does sound like the start of another story, though. So someone work on that quick.
See, for me, it's all about the voice. Like people will say, "Oh, this person has that many, like views," and I'll go and like their voice just doesn't do it for me. So sometimes I'll end up with that narrator that's only got maybe like 500 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers, and that's who I'll listen to from now on because their voice was more pleasing to me.
Right. Yeah, I can agree with that. There are definitely channels that I've gone to check out and just their voice. I don't know if it's necessarily just their voice, but maybe it's the amount of effort they put into it. Like someone might actually try to speak in a certain way as opposed to someone else who just acts like they're on a phone call and just reads it off robotically.
Right.
Yeah. So
there definitely are different styles with narrating. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's no necessarily right way to narrate, just different ways of doing it. And everyone has their own, their own opinion and what they like. There are people who read stories in like me personally, the way I read stories is pretty soft. I try to do it so that it's like pleasant to listen to, but then there are narrators who do it in a way where they're actually trying to scare you with their voice,
Yeah.
So they talk like in a really deep, raspy, monotone way. And I don't think one is better than the other. They're just different styles. And it's really up to like the listener to decide which one they like best.
Right. And if I may interject with something that has literally nothing to do with the subject that we're talking about, well, maybe only slightly. I don't even know the name. There's one thing. Do you ever find yourself not liking a certain narrator's narration because of their cadence? Like someone who just repeats the same cadence over and over again. It sounds like they're saying almost like they're saying the same thing repeatedly.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of narrators that do that, and some people do like that. I guess I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking bad about anybody because I'm not.
Right.
But like I guess a good example of that is Mr. Creeps, how he ends a lot of his words with a certain inflection, and he does that with a lot of his words. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's bad.
Right.
That's just an example of somebody who does that. But obviously, a lot of people still enjoy listening to that.
Yeah. I couldn't name whichever ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but yeah, I've noticed that. But then the other thing that I do whenever I listen to one and I say, man, how can people listen to the same cadence over and over again? What I'll do is I'll say there must be a reason people are listening to this. So I'll look at how many views they have and then read the comments and read all these loving comments from people talking about how great the voice is and how they love the way they read. So obviously my view of it is just an opinion, and there are millions of people or however many people are watching it that completely disagree with me. So obviously I'm not exactly correct about everything. And that's what I've realized.
I actually have a big pet peeve with narrators. If you naturally have a monotone voice, please do not narrate. I have listened to more than 10 different people on YouTube just in the last 3 weeks that just had monotone voices. And I'm sitting there just going, Bueller, the whole time I'm listening.
Right.
Well, I do have one thing to input. It's going back a little bit to Kyle's question earlier about like if somebody was narrating and what they can do for exposure and stuff. And I'd say the best thing somebody could do would be to try to find a way to make them unique, like to make it so that like what can you give somebody that they're not going to find on another channel? Because like for most people, it's just their voice. That's what's different. It's just the way that, their voice versus somebody else's voice.
Right.
Me personally, when I started, I thought it would be really fun to write music for all the stories I do, and also like do sound design, kind of like it was a movie. Like there's lots of sound effects for everything that's happening in the background and stuff like that.
Right.
And I feel like for me personally, that's worked really well with setting my channel apart. Just because like on mine, you're not going to find like music that you'll find on like Mr. Creepypasta's channel and stuff like that. And even if it's something small like that, that still makes it different enough. So I think like that's one of the best things somebody could do is find a way to make their stuff unique, no matter what it is that they find, because
Agreed.
that'll definitely help set you apart and make it so that people will want to come back to your channel specifically for a story. When there are like 10 versions of it, they'll come back to yours because they know they'll get something that they won't get on the other channels.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the approach I've decided I should take too. Although I haven't, I can't say I've completely taken care of all the sounds and music so far on my first few that I've made, because what I've been doing so far is writing and narrating stuff that revolves around certain holidays. So I'm kind of in a rush to get them out when I do them. And there is music and so forth that I've written and recorded within the stories, like for the intros and everything. But I also wanted to do, some sound design below just the story itself. But I was kind of like, the first one I put up was Valentine's Day oriented, and it was already Valentine's Day, and I was kind of finishing it up, and I didn't think I really had time to go through and do that all myself. So I ended up finding Miyu, the musician who a lot of people use music from with their narrations, and put it underneath. And I kind of actually just added some effects to change it up, and added like some guitar distortion and stuff to turn it into a bit of a different sound. So at least it doesn't have the exact same tone that that it has in everybody else's. So yeah, that's kind of off on a tangent, but yeah, I agree. Find something that makes yours different from the other people's, because just doing it exactly like somebody else isn't going to make people want to stay and listen to yours over theirs.
Yeah, and even if it's something small, like the way you present the stories, even if it's just nothing else, just your voice and the stories, if you present them in a different way, like let's say 1 week you do a specific genre of story, the next week you do a different genre of story, that's interesting enough and different enough for your channel, to attract people only on that, if that makes sense.
Right.
Just like, so it doesn't have to be, like you have to bring in all this crazy extra stuff. It can still just be you and your voice, but it can be something as simple as just the way you present the stories.
Agreed. Now I know on that subject, I've found several people who are actually doing this already since then, but I decided most of the ones I were listening to would just immediately start telling the story at the beginning. And I thought, hey, why isn't anybody doing intros like I'm a fan of the old horror hosts, TV horror hosts. So I decided I'd try it like that. Of course, I've found that several other people do that now since then, but at least that was me trying to set myself apart at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that is a really good idea. Personally, I don't do stuff like that because I suck at writing, and so I can never think of what to say other than, "Hey guys, it's me. Here's a story that I read." So that's why I don't do it. But anybody that is better at writing than me can definitely try it.
Phone, though, I'll answer the phone and I'll be like, "Hey, it's me," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, don't they know it's me?"
Right.
I agree with Michael, though. I love the production. Like when I ran Twisted Tales podcast, I would spend almost more time writing the script for the opening, the little blurbs between stories and the ending, than I did the actual editing of the audio, because I wanted everything to have that production value. When I added in the sound effects and all this crazy shit. And I do find that while that's predominantly what I will always be drawn to, I also love what Ronnie does. Like I've listened to a lot of what Ronnie does, and just saying, "Hey, it's me," and then doing the story. I'm finding that as time goes by, and I'm welcoming myself into new modern eras, which is difficult for me because I still mentally live in the 90s. It's nice to actually to see that, because while I love that production value, the way he does it also makes me feel more connected to him, more personalized. So I think there's really something to be said for both sides of those.
Well, I was going to say, like, when I started my channel, that's something I was trying to decide really quick is whether or not I want to be like, mysterious and just be like the Dark Somnium. And everyone's like, "Oh, I wonder what his name is. I wonder what he looks like," stuff like that. Because, I know that like that will make it more easier to get scared and invested in my stories. If, me as a person, as a channel, I'm more mysterious. But after a while, I was like, no, I want people to come to my channel, because they like listening to me or because they like me. I don't want to just be a face and a character, which is a lot of people do, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I gave away like my name, and like I'm my face. Like I used to have my face as the channel icon for a long time, and I feel like that's gotten me a different type of audience than if I had just gone with the like I'm the Dark Somnium. You know, everything I do is based around trying to scare people. I feel like I have a much different audience than somebody who would try to stick with, you know, just being that character, which is totally fine. But yeah, I do like having that personal connection with people, and I feel like both options are good. It just really depends on what the creator would want. But I thought I'd provide a little input on that.
So what do you think you mentioned that using your personality and your face kind of gave you a different type of audience. What do you think the differences are between the two?
The differences I would say, are like now a lot more of my audience, calls me, they call me Ronnie, you know, nobody really calls me the Dark Somnium. I've had people call me Somnium, but for the most part, people call me Ronnie because that's my name, you know? And when people come to my channels, when people come to my channel, they more or less come because they want to listen to the story and, you know, listen to me, Ronnie, narrate a story and listen to the music Ronnie adds and listen to the sound effects that Ronnie does. They don't necessarily come to my channel to get scared, you know? Right. Does that make sense? Like, which is good and bad because sometimes I'll get people that come to my channel from like Mr. Creeps or Let's Read or something like that, and they'll be expecting that I'm some scary character and my scaries are going to be terrifying, and then like they'll get stories like the one I did yesterday, which is just a sad story. There's not really much scary about it, you know? Like half the stories I read are more sad than scary. And so like I have this kind of like this thing with my audience where, or like, don't know what the word is. I guess like rapport, with my audience where like, you know, we can talk about like, so like most of my comments are like, oh, Ronnie, I really like this story. I really like this and that about it. People don't really leave comments like, oh, the story's so scary. The Dark Somnium stories are so scary. You know, I don't really get stuff like that. If that makes sense. But that's the main difference, I'd say. Not that either like one audience is better or anything like that. Right.
And I think that actually applies to many types of art. You know, having a personal connection. A lot of people like things because of who the person is, not necessarily because of what they're producing. And that's not to say that they don't like this person's, you know, film or this person's music or whatever, but getting to know them personally, I think attracts a lot more people in many cases.
And it's the same way on the writer's side. Like once you build a brand, people come to expect a certain thing from you in that brand. When they see your username pop up and they'll see, oh, hey, it's Bifil's Disciple, or it's ColourBlindness, you know, or it's Dopamine. They'll say, oh, yeah, I know this is going to be a good story because they've come to expect what they know that you'll produce and what you'll create is going to be good. And so that's really where you get that fan base, is having those people who they know what kind of quality and what kind of effort you're going to put into the story to make it unique.
Are you saying I write bad stories, Kyle?
Yes, I do. You
I guess I'll throw in that if you want to get successful, grow your channel, get more viewers with narrating creepypastas and stuff like that, NoSleep. The best thing to do right now, because the first impression is what makes people click. You know, you have to make people click onto your videos in the first place. Put a scary image on the right, put the title of the story on the left, and make one word red in the thumbnail.
That's what everybody does. So you're correct.
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up next, is like, unfortunately, that is kind of the formula, because when people like that's how people that like consume this kind of content identify this type of content, you know? Like I learned that like about 2 years after I started narrating, when I realized that like when it's just like a picture and like some text over the whole thing, it doesn't like attract the same type of people that it does, you know, for like Mr. Creepypasta or Mr. Creeps or Creeps and Pasta, or all those people that have Creeps and Pasta in their name. like it doesn't attract the same audience, and that is the audience you want, because I mean, that's what it is. It's a scary story,
Yeah.
But that is true. Yeah, you have to use that type of thumbnail. Like, I don't know why, and I kind of hate it, but like a video will get 50,000 more views, with that thumbnail than otherwise would. Jesus. So
I've always wondered, where do all these thumbnails come from? Like, is there like a database full of these dark, grisly images?
See, I've wondered that too. So I'm gonna hopefully learn something here.
Yeah, you can get them.
Google image search.
Actually, it's just ArtStation. If you go to ArtStation website, where artists post their art, you just type in, like, I don't know, scary character or something, and then just like ask the author or the artist, be like, hey, can I use this for my thumbnail? And like, I've never had anybody say no. Actually, they're always just like, yeah, just credit me as the author or artist. So yeah, it's actually, me personally, I get them from ArtStation, and all the time on that website, I'll see other like pictures that I've seen in other channels' thumbnails. So I assume they get them from there too.
Okay. Yeah, I've wondered a few times. I've looked in people's descriptions to see where they get the artwork. Sometimes it's from Instagram. Other times it's from a few other well-known places. But then I go check those places out, and they don't all really have searches that allow you to specifically search for art. So our ArtStation sounds like it's much more concentrated on art itself. So
yeah, it's pretty much like Facebook, but for Facebook, and like Twitter, but for art.
Right.
Let's face it, we're all on the FBI's most wanted list for our search history anyway. So
that's true.
Yeah.
I do Google how to make a nuclear weapon and blow up New York while looking for creepypasta images.
Well, you can always use the excuse if the FBI shows up that, hey, I'm writing stories, I need to do research.
Yeah, research.
I'm not gonna lie, true story.
Just pay no attention to what's in the freezer.
I actually received a letter from the federal government over a series of searches I did at one point in time. It was involved like deep web hacking and some really screwed up shit. I ended up just stopping and not even writing the story. And it was basically just a letter of concern, trying to figure out what was going on. It was part of some team that was monitoring like certain keywords, basically is what they were doing. And yeah, I had to explain, I'm a writer. I had to like send them like, examples of my writing, and like, so they could understand what the guy was doing. And it was cleared up literally within a week, like with no real like difficulty on my part. It was, I got the letter, and then there was a phone number. I called the phone number. I discussed things with them. I sent them over samples of my work in email over that week. They saw it. Then they looked at the I search history because I had to sign something allowing them to do so. And I'm like, at this point in time, I really don't have anything to hide, so I might as well. And it was cleared up real quick and easy, but that's the only time that's ever happened to me. And I don't think I've written anything about hacking or deep web stuff since then, just to be case.
I don't blame you.
So, like, after that happened, you were like, damn, I got to start a writing career now to cover it up.
Yeah. The writing
That's
was
what
my
started
cover. Yep, that's exactly it.
I did want to touch on something to do with the Writers Blackout, which is...
that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, it was, I guess, to create awareness and different things like that. But the interesting thing is, if you look at Google Trends for like YouTube, NoSleep had its highest search on YouTube in February since April of 2017, which means that people who couldn't read on NoSleep went to YouTube to listen to narrations.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, so
makes sense though, because a lot of people were like really upset. Like, we get why it's closing, we get what we're doing here, but we're really upset that we don't have our stories immediately, because that's how we survive, like getting through like every day and night. So can you tell us what different narrators we can go and listen to? They're like endless threads about this.
Right. Yeah, there's actually one of the narrators that I was listening to during the blackout. He was talking about the blackout, and he was kind of angry about it. He was saying, I'm one of the people who does it properly. I ask permission first before I do this, and I always have. So his anger was over the fact that even he, being one of the people who does it properly, is blocked from looking at NoSleep during this whole thing.
Funny thing about that, not to like, I'm not going to identify anything, but I know who it was, and I wanted to talk about a similar experience that I had with him. And it's kind of like when I saw your post, I was like, oh, I bet I know who that was, because
Right.
one time he was doing a live stream, and like his live stream was about how he was having money issues, I think, and
Oh.
I had entered the live stream like late, and I didn't know what was going on, and somebody asked me how I was, and I was like, oh, I'm good. I recently got some new computer parts, and then like he like stopped the story he was reading and was like, hey, Dark Somnium, don't come to my channel bragging about your new computer parts and your explosible income when I'm over here struggling with money. And I was like, what in the fuck?
Wow.
And I was like, all right, whatever, man. And I just left. So
yeah. Yeah, one other time, the first time I heard him say something in a live stream that I thought was kind of weird that he would say this, just because he's part of this narrator community, and obviously he has to talk with writers and everything. And he was actually kind of insulting to some other narrators, trying to be funny about it. And it was all because you could tell he's very defensive. Like if somebody says something that he perceives as insulting, he doesn't want to let it slide. He needs to address it right away. Somebody came in his chat and said something. They named some other big name narrator and said this person is the best narrator, way better than this guy that we're listening to right now. So he had to stop and stop what he was doing and address this person and say, how dare you say that? That person is not even and actually I won't even say what he said because it'll give away who he is, but he started reading his credentials off like he's trying to prove himself to someone in the chat. And I just thought, this is below you, man. Why do you need to do that? You're the guy running the live stream. You're not in the chat. You don't need to do this.
yeah, I feel like because people do that crap all the time, especially like just on narrators live streams. And I think it's funny. Like people do it to me all the time. They'll be like, hey, you sound like Mr. Creepypasta. And I'll be like, oh yeah, Mr. Creepypasta wishes he sounded like me. He's probably not even as tall as me. Like I'll just joke with them, you know,
Right.
like it's stupid. It's pointless to get mad. They're just random people on the internet.
I was gonna say I always view it as a compliment whenever somebody says that I sound like somebody else or something, because when I first started out, I was kind of small, and there was a bigger Redditor named Byfield's Disciple who I really looked up to, and he's been a really good friend over the years. And he's also really involved in the Writers Blackout, by the way. But
Okay.
so I wrote a story, and people actually started to believe that I was him, and that he had created an alternate account to write these stories. And so, like, it generated so many subscriptions for me, and he went along with it too. To like, even to this very day, there are still some users who actually think that we're the same person.
Wow, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
There's and this is not directly related, but the same kind of thing. A few years ago, somebody, I forget the name of the guy, but somebody told me to check out this YouTube channel of a guitarist who I guess he tests out guitar equipment on this channel, and he never shows his face or anything. You just basically see the equipment and like maybe his hands reaching in. And because of the guy's voice, everybody thinks it's Jack Black, but it's not. So yeah, he's got this huge following because they think he's Jack Black.
That's funny.
Oh, I was just gonna say something before I had to go, because I actually have to get up early in the morning and go to work. So I was just gonna mention some more things about the blackout and like what I hope that it does accomplish in the future, because like I hate to say this, but like I think a lot of times the users on Reddit or even on YouTube, they don't care about the copyright stuff like that they should, because it's not their problem. On the internet, things are designed to be so easy to access, and they're just not really concerned with how it can affect a creator and how it can make some creators just give up, because I've seen it happen where they say, well, my stuff has been stolen so much, it's pointless to go on. So I really hope that the blackout can cause an awareness to change so that narrators and writers can really work together to prevent it from happening. I mean, we're always going to have thieves. That's going to be forever and ever throughout all of history. But, at least we have more tools now to be able to fight it and to be able to show people like, you should be concerned about this, because like the lockdown for an entire week, maybe it did make some of a difference where that people realized, hey, you know, if this keeps on happening, these writers and narrators, they're going to stop giving us the scary stories that we like. And maybe that'll scare them into thinking more about copyright stuff.
Right. I just wanted to ask, one of you mentioned your girlfriend is doing a channel. Who was that?
Yeah, that was me. I'm the only one here with a girlfriend. So
Oh,
no,
man.
I'm just joking.
Hey, I don't have a girlfriend. I got
I've
wives.
listened. I've listened to the
wives?
stories. The girlfriend sounds a lot like you doing a high pitched voice. I don't
Oh, is
know.
that so? Is that so?
Is this a double
Sure. Voice
Hey,
modulator.
Ronnie, come downstairs for sex. All right, guys, I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go. My girlfriend's calling me.
My
Okay.
girlfriend Mickey Mouse.
that sounded like the worst Mickey Mouse impression I've ever heard in my life.
I was going to ask who that is because I've heard a few female readers, narrators, but you didn't mention who it was.
Oh, her channel name is Romnex.
Is it ROMNEX?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too. So if your girlfriend is Mickey Mouse, does that make you a Disney princess?
Does Mickey Mouse date Disney princesses? Because if so, then yes.
I mean,
On
of course.
the side, yeah.
Yeah.
On the side. Okay, then yeah.
Did you say homicide?
Well, my favorite movie is Alice in Wonderland. I don't know if she's a Disney princess, but yeah, I'd be down to be her.
All right. Well, that does it for our first episode of The Graveyard Shift. Kyle has already dropped off, so we'll say goodbye to him right now. But next we can say goodbye to Somjibu. What's your real name?
Oh wow, I really mistyped that. The Dark Somnium, also
The
known
Dark
as Ronnie.
Somnium. Yeah, Ronnie. All right. We will see you later, Ronnie.
All right, bye guys. Thanks for having me.
Now we can say goodbye to Raz. It sees you.
Just remember, it always sees you.
Always. And last but not least, the Slimebeast.
All right. Time for me to go back to Slimebeast.com.
Here's a can of Pepsi that has nothing to do with the ad at all.
Time for me to go back to my books on Amazon.com.
All right, we'll go check those out too. See you later. That's a wrap for tonight's discussion. Thank you to our guests as well as everyone who tuned in. Oh, and one more thing. Have a very scary evening.
Kill. Ma.
Now the live stream is ours to control.
Do not attempt to adjust your headsets. We own the alpha and the beta waves.